Greetings, Culturians, and welcome back. We have so much to get into when it comes to the complete failure of box office performance for Snow White. That's right. You haven't seen anything yet till you see these numbers, and they're worse than reported originally. And frankly, that surprises even me because I reported some really dismal numbers. So we're going to get into it. Please stick around. Hang out to the end of the video. Might be something surprising you'll want to see. And before we do get started, double check you're still subscribed. Look down there, make sure that that little button down there is gray and says subscribed. If not, turn that red button that says subscribe to gray. And then hit the little bell icon, turn on all notifications, and hit the thumbs up button while you're down there because that kind of engagement really moves channels forward, and you have been doing a great job of that lately. So thank you in advance for those of you who are subscribing again or subscribing for the first time. But let's get into the story. This is a great one coming to our friend Marvin Montanaro over at That Park Place. Now, you may have seen something like this a few times over the course of the last 6 months, and that's not surprising because we get constantly updated on what company's house is listing as what the expenses were for this film. And Disney's Snow White flop exposed a lot, an awful lot. Not just, the fact that Rachel Zegler controversy didn't help things, but the budget ballooned and the box office collapse cost the studio $170 million. That's an awful lot of money. So let's get into it. From the story, the financial fallout from Disney's live-action Snow White remake flop is finally coming into focus, and these numbers are nothing short of catastrophic. According to the new reporting from Forbes, our friend Carolyn Reid, the studio's controversial remake didn't just underperform, it cratered after ballooning production costs, weak box office returns, and mounting controversies surrounding the lead star of Snow White. The flop has resulted in an estimated $170 million loss in money for Disney from theatrical revenue alone. Add marketing into the mix and its catastrophe becomes a box office apocalyptic event. And you know what? That's saying something, because they also have Star Wars and Indiana Jones to look back on. And then if you start digging into how this happened, the story gets worse, because even though I was here covering this particular story while it was happening, giving you all the updates on what Zegler was ending up costing the movie, how many times they had to film it, and everything else that comes into play, the production costs were out of control from the very beginning. And again, all because they wanted to preserve a non-white Snow White, which made no sense. Regardless, the budget spiraled out of control. Per financial filings for the film's UK production entity, Snow White racked up a staggering $336.5 million in production costs, putting it at the same spending tier as major franchise tentpoles like Star Wars and, you guessed it, Avengers films. That alone would have been a massive gamble for a remake of a nearly 90-year-old animated classic. And really, that's probably the only reason they remade it, is to try to hang on to it as long as they can, or at least their version of Avets as long as they can, although they screwed that up too. But the problem started long before the movie ever hit the theaters, and it wasn't just with the non-use of actual dwarfs, it wasn't with this crazy CGI, it was with their main star, which we'll talk about in a moment. The production was plagued by setbacks, including a destructive set fire, including filming at Pinewood Studios, and extensive reshoots that drove costs even higher. By mid-2022, before filming had even fully wrapped, Disney had already spent over $183 million. And believe it or not, I had reported that at the time, and then we went back for another round of reshoots. Even after receiving roughly $64.9 million in UK tax reimbursements, thank you UK for funding Disney disasters, Disney's net production spend still landed at approximately $271.6 million. That means the film needed to perform at a blockbuster level just to break even. Take that 271, multiply it by 3, and that'll give you kind of an idea of where it needed to be just to break even. That's an awful lot of money. So the box office collapse sealed the film's fate almost immediately, and we dive into this. Despite massive investment, the audiences simply didn't show up. The live-action remake opened to about $87.3 million globally, already below studio projections, and finished its theatrical run at just $205.7 million worldwide. Now, what does that tell you? This thing is deader than dead. It wasn't even something that they could celebrate as a wash. It wasn't a win. It was an enormous loss to the studio that ended up costing them an extraordinary amount of money. And that's before, again, we got into the reshoots, the marketing, and everything else that comes along with producing and distributing one of these films. This is putting it at one of the lowest grossing Disney modern live action remake ever created. In fact, it's probably right in there with some really, truly disastrous films. And yet, it gets even more brutal because this is where the math gets bad. Studios don't keep all box office revenue. It's true. Theater chains typically retain about half the ticket sales, meaning Disney's actual return from the film's theatrical run lands around $102.9 million out of all of that. If you stack that against the $271.6 million net production cost, and you're looking at roughly $168 to $170 million in destruction, that's a disastrous number. And hence the headline, the Snow White film flop cost Disney dearly. And we're not even talking about, let's say, all the marketing that went along with it, because Carolyn Reid doesn't include that in there because it's not as easy to verify. And I can't blame her. It isn't easy to verify what the marketing budget on a film like this would be. You only have to look around and figure out that it was very substantial because it got more marketing than normal, even for something that costs this much. This is not good, folks. Not good at all. The estimated $170 million theatrical loss wasn't damaging enough. You had the financial picture surrounding Snow White being a flop because of the dire marketing expenses that are factored in. And they were dire. It was rescue mode for this film. Blockbuster films of this scale don't just carry the production budget costs into the equation. They also bring up aggressive global promotional campaigns. Industry tracking routinely places marketing and distribution, especially for major Disney releases, at $100 to $150 million range. And I think that's being kind because we know they dumped more than $200 million into the last Star Wars disaster. And depending upon the breadth of the rollout, well, it could be even more money. That spend typically covers worldwide trailer placement, television advertising buys, digital and social media campaigns, which also includes buying off influencers, brand partnerships and cross promotions, red carpet premieres and press tours, and international localization and dubbing promotion. Wild stuff indeed. Given the controversy surrounding Snow White, Disney arguably had to spend even more on damage control and visibility, attempting to reframe the narrative and drive audience interest despite the growing backlash. There were even reports of the company hiring social media gurus to keep an eye on Rachel Zegler specifically after a series of explosive political postings, none of which helped the film. If anything, it probably drove more people away. She is pure box office poison, and it has worked its effects in almost everything she's been involved in, and that would include West Side Story. But we're not done there. The financial reality is marketing costs are not included in the UK production filings that revealed the film's $336.5 million gross production spend. That means the previously outlined $168 to $170 million theatrical loss only reflects the gap between box office returns and net production costs. Again, that's Carolyn Reid doing her job because she doesn't want to try to estimate what the actual marketing spend would be because it's inconsistent. It can be easily estimated, but when you actually dive in and look around and you actually get some real numbers, you oftentimes realize you way underestimated it, and that's been happening quite frequently. Disney remakes and sequels haven't been faring very well of late. In fact, they've got more coming up in the near future, including Toy Story 5, and I don't think that's going to ring the bell the same way as every other Toy Story movie. They kind of have been falling off since 3, and if you don't think that 3 was a good place to stop, I don't know what to tell you. They've not had success with Star Wars. They haven't had success after Endgame with Marvel, and they really didn't have any success with Indiana Jones, and they literally killed off Willow, just brutally, including deleting the entire series from Disney Minus. Regardless of what I think, I want to know what you think. Do you think Disney is capable of returning to greatness? Do you think that Snow White ended up being a learning moment for them and they don't have to go to a learning center to get it? And finally, will Disney learn the lesson that maybe it's better just to create something new than to rely on something that was reliable in the past, but that you're likely to destroy? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. And also, let me know what you think as far as how much this film really lost at the box office. Be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya. Just not watching Snow White again. Man.